So without any further ado, I'm going to introduce you to Navashni Naidu, who is ASATA's Professional Project and Program Manager. Navashni will be taking you through the presentation, and also on the call we have ASATA CEO Otto de Vries, who will from time to time jump in to answer any of your questions. So if you want to ask a question, please don't hesitate to do so. All you need to do is click at the bottom of your screen where it says questions, enter your question, and we will endeavor to answer them for you. Right, so now all that's left for me to do is to hand over to Navashni. Navashni, are you on?
Yes, thank you, Nats. Good morning to our guests on the webinar. What we will do, the process that we're going to follow is I've got a PowerPoint presentation, the ASATA Professional Program presentation on our screen. I hope our guests can see that. We'll go through the presentation briefly, and then perhaps we could take questions thereafter. Okay.
Sounds good.
So, without much further ado, what is the APP exactly? Let me at the very outset say that there has been some confusion that the ASATA Professional Program is a training program. It's actually not. It's an online system that is set up to recognize the expertise, qualifications, and experience of travel consultants and travel managers. It's really designed to help every individual consultant working within the industry to achieve a professional recognition. Now, some of you may not know, but ASATA is the only SAQA accredited, the only association that has been given professional recognition by SAQA. And because of this, we are in a position to be able to have two designations that travel consultants can apply for. Those two designations are a travel practitioner and a travel professional. We'll go a little bit more deeply just now into the requirements of each of those designations. As I mentioned a minute ago, ASATA is the only national travel industry body that's accredited by SAQA to be able to offer these designations to the travel industry. Like I said, ASATA is not a training program. It's an online platform that allows consultants to basically be recognized for all the experience that they've had over the years and the qualifications that they've built up. It's really about the consultant or the travel manager building up a portfolio in this way. And hopefully we'll have some time after the presentation to quickly go through a demonstration of exactly what that profile looks like. Moving on, just to be sure, and if anyone has any kind of confusion in their minds around what is the difference between a training program and a designation, simply put, training or qualification represents a planned combination, a sequence of national unit standards. Now that might be alien talk to some of you, but unit standards really is a collection of training modules that's put together in different programs, whether it's a short program or a certificate or degree or diploma, for someone to achieve a particular outcome in training. A designation, on the other hand, essentially means a title or status that is conferred by a professional body, ASATA in this case, to an individual recognizing their experience and their right to practice in that particular occupational field. So once we confer, once any individual goes through the process of the ASATA Professional Program, and let's assume you've been awarded the travel designation, ASATA has the right to confer that upon you based on your experience and qualifications that we would have gathered through a portfolio of evidence through the process. ASATA Professional Program is offered to both ASATA and non-ASATA members. When it comes to the issue of how much does it cost, there is a slight distinction between the cost that's related to ASATA members, as you would see on your screen at the moment. The registration fee, so let me say there's two fees attached to the ASATA Professional Program and being awarded a designation. The first fee we refer to as a registration fee. For ASATA members, that fee is 177 Rand. And it's, let me also reiterate that the 177 Rand and the registration fee at this point is an opening special for anyone that's applying for the professional program at this point. Naturally, that will increase as a nominal fee over the next year. So to repeat, ASATA member registration fee is 177 Rand. Non-ASATA members, the registration fee is 298 Rand. The designation fee for ASATA members is 345 Rand, and the designation fee applicable to non-ASATA members is 598 Rand. So as you could see, it's a very nominal fee at the moment and quite affordable. Let me point out that the annual fee, the 177 and the 298 Rand for non-ASATA members, is paid annually to ASATA. The designation fee is a once-off fee. Moving along, once you've been awarded the designation, whether it's a travel practitioner or travel professional designation, the validation period, the validity of that designation is a 3-year period. It's also awarded to you 3 years from the point of award and not a calendar year. During the 3-year period, now here comes the training, the aspect or the issue of training. During the 3-year period, every individual is expected to upskill themselves and achieve what we called continuous professional development, CPD points, over the 3-year period. You have to achieve 60 CPD points. How that is done, and you'll also go through it a little bit more in the presentation in a minute, is you have to upskill yourselves through workshops, training programs, attending familiarization or educational trips, and each one of those has a particular number of CPD points attached to it, which accumulates as you go along over the 3 years, embarking on those different areas of training or educationals. The APP process, registration process, is extremely simple. Essentially, you have to log on, hop on onto the APP website, which is app.asata.co.za. Registration can be done in one of two ways. You can register as an individual, meaning it's just yourself, or you could register as a group. So assuming you work for TMC, for example, you may have 5 to 10 people or even more that want to register simultaneously. That would be a group registration. When you start the registration process, it will ask you for some very basic personal information, name, ID number, email, that kind of information. Once you've provided that information, it will then take you on to the next point, which is payment for registration. Remember, we just spoke about that, 177 Rand for ASATA members and 298 Rand for non-ASATA members. Once the payment has been made for registration, you'll then be sent via email a link, a login link that takes you into the actual profile individually. Whether you've registered as a group or individual, the log on is for individuals. You will then be able to access your profile and start building on the profile, giving us information on your qualifications and your experience, etc. The profile is made up essentially of 5 different cluster areas where we ask you a series of questions talking about or questions about your skills and your competency. The 5 cluster areas that we have, or the questions are, is essentially operational skills, destination skills, service skills, business skills, and computer skills. I want to reassure anyone that, our guests that are listening in today, the questions are not there as trick questions or to find out if you really do have 10 years of experience in Excel, for example. That we will build up through your portfolio. It's all questions that you would absolutely be at ease answering. It's about you and what your experience and qualification is. So what are the benefits? Why should you actually have or participate in the APP program and progress towards getting a designation? The idea is professionalization of the industry, and you as an individual, apart from professionalizing yourself within the industry, it's gaining accolades for everything you have done and experienced in all your years as a travel consultant. The APP program provides you with the profile of provides us with a profile of industry recognized competency for you as an individual. As we mentioned earlier on, there's a continuous professional development process. So it makes sure that you don't sit behind your desk with just the qualification you have. It actually forces you and your organization, in most cases, to ensure that you go and upskill yourself on a regular basis. If in the case of the travel practitioner designation, over a 3-year period. It creates awareness of training needs. So it provides you with a training gap analysis. You may not even be aware of a particular training module that you require. This process would help you identify that. And of course, it allows recognition of you and between you and your peers. It sets you apart because the APP program is giving you an industry recognized competency. It distinguishes you, as I mentioned, from your peers who have not gone through the process of getting the designation. By the way, once you have been awarded the designation, like other designations, maybe as chartered accountants or engineering, you would have the opportunity to have that designation showcased on your signatures, for example, and the designation essentially is showcased as travel prac. We'll give you more information on that and how to actually market yourself as someone who has a designation as you join and we engage with you directly. From the employer point of view, the organizations you may be working on, it's an endorsement of employee credibility. So the employer is getting yet a lot more comfort levels in terms of the employees that are working within the organizations by having your qualifications and your experience now being showcased by designation. It sets standards and a benchmark for talent and competent employees. It allows for career pathing. It allows for succession planning. From an industry point of view, as you may know, the travel industry is not a regulated one and definitely wants to move towards professionalizing the industry as a whole. The APP program is a step in that direction. It allows skills gaps within the industry holistically and then allows training, perhaps tailor-made training to be put together for all of you within the travel industry to embark on. It provides statistical data for the industry on what kind of, or the level of employees that we have within the industry. It also talks about development areas pretty much from like the individual and the company level. It talks about development areas that the industry needs to look at as a whole. So when the industry is deciding where to put budgets through and where to put more emphasis toward, the APP program and the gap analysis that emanates from it helps in that process. It also promotes the travel industry as one that offers a career of choice for our school leavers. It's not just an easy industry to get in, a glamorous industry to get in, and it's all about flying on an airplane and going to exotic destinations. The APP program shows you that the travel industry and being a part of it is much more than just the glamour that's very often the misconception. I've spoken about this already. It helps us as an industry grow a pool of talented individuals that any organization within the travel industry can tap into and look at should they need to be able to employ new employees. Brand identity as an industry, it's giving us a brand. We're an industry that has a number of employees that essentially now have a designation, and what the designation means is there's credibility attached to the employees that we have. Professionalization of the industry, I reiterate that point. So that is a very, very quick overview of the APP program. I think if we now look at and go through questions that you may have specifically, we could basically be able to give you more in-depth information based on that. Thank you very much, Nas.
Thanks so much, Navashni. I apologize. There seems to be a little bit of feedback happening on the call. Not sure what's happening because the only person that was actually unmuted at the time was Navashni. So apologies for that. Not sure why that's happened, and hopefully it hasn't disrupted your user experience too much. If you would like to ask a question, once again, there's a little Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. You simply need to click on it and type any questions that you have there. If you're not able for some reason to do that, there's also a little chat button to the right of that, where you can also add any little chat questions that you've got, and we'll endeavor to answer them. Navashni, if I may just kick off with one question before we tackle the questions that have already come through. How does it work for an ITC? Because presumably as an ITC, I don't have a boss or I don't have a line manager. So how would they make sure that their application is vetted, if you will? Navashni? Hello, Navashni? Navashni? We seem to have lost Navashni. 2 seconds, let's try and get her back on.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Okay, did I go off for a second?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm sorry about that. I didn't realize it. Let me go back to the question then. So your question was around ITCs. Correct. And how do ITCs fit into the program? It's very simply put. There's two categories of ITCs. One is, am I still on, Nats?
You are. I can hear you.
Okay. Just send me a message if I'm not. I do apologize. I'm not sure what's going on. So ITCs that are affiliated to a TMC, working together with the TMC, that's a simpler process. A training manager or an operations manager within the TMC would act as a verification agent. ITCs that are not affiliated to a TMC and perhaps have a setup with, an organization set up where they have a number of consultants that work under a manager, that will also still be a simple process where the manager would act as the verification agent, verifying the qualifications and experience. The concern I know is around where ITCs work as a one-man band and individually. We as ASATA have taken measures to be able to verify that information of the individual travel consultants and ITCs. And we've got criteria that we follow.
Okay, great. We have a question actually from Namibia, and it's a really good question. So is this just a program for South Africa, or can anybody in the Southern African region who issues tickets through one of the South African TMCs, for example, register their profile on APP?
We certainly welcome any travel consultant and our colleagues from Southern Africa. I know we are having a little bit of a glitch with the ID numbers from individuals outside of South Africa. At this point in time, we're using passport numbers where available, but I'm happy to say that our IT team are on it and we should have this fixed by next week. So anyone that is from outside of South Africa, please engage with us directly and we'll assist you expedite the process of your registration.
Another question, do we have presentation skills programs in our package? So we don't, it's not really a training program. So I guess what you could perhaps look at is whether or not presentation skills is one of those areas in which you are rated within the APP program.
I can respond to that, Nats. Presentation skills is one of the areas that you are questioned on or rated against, but I'm happy to say that we are very well aware that travel consultants don't necessarily do presentation skills or need to have presentation skills for their deliverables. So it is a skill that we do have an option of not applicable for. So having said that, it will not in any way avoid or prevent the consultant from having a designation awarded simply because they don't have some kind of presentation skills training behind them.
Okay, great. Just once again, if you'd like to ask a question, right at the bottom of your screen is a Q&A box. Please feel free to enter your question there. Alternatively, there's also a chat box to the right where you can enter your question and we'll endeavour to answer them. We have another question, Navashni, with regards to the CPD points allocated to training. Would HR need to submit the areas of development for points to accumulate?
No, so the individual consultant, the onus is upon them and their responsibility as and when they go through different training programs, whether it's a familiarization tour or it's an actual in-classroom training course. It's their responsibility to go into their profile, which they have access to over the 3-year period, and update those skills, which automatically convert itself into a CPD point. From an HR perspective, as an organization, we could certainly look at assisting the HR department in the, identifying some of those skills gaps to be able to have development plans compiled within the organization. But at the end of the day, it is the individual's responsibility to make sure that the CPD points are updated within their own profiles.
So that's actually quite a good point, Navashni, because you know, we look at this type of program and we think, can we only really register ourselves if our consortium, for example, has decided to do like a group registration or has endorsed it? But actually, it's an individual choice to get a designation. It's individual professional development. Would that be a correct statement?
Absolutely, 100%. We're actually encouraging consultants to register for the APP program right now, whether their organizations have taken a decision to move forward or not. We have a number of TMCs, for example, who are very interested in having the program run as a collective within the organization, but naturally due to budgeting issues or various other aspects within the organization, there might be a slight delay for the organization to roll it out collectively. But that does not in any way stop the individual from registering on their own.
So in terms of the actual CPD points, it's not the organization that determines how the individual is going to get their CPD points. It is the individual's role to find ways in which to upskill themselves and opportunities to professionalize and upskill themselves to gain those CPD points, whether they're an ITC or whether they're a consultant.
It can be done jointly. Remember, with an organization who wants to assist their consultants, they could develop a training plan or individual improvement plan together and use this process to be able to have the type of training that they decide on going to and go for those, those kinds of training as opposed to ad hoc training. So, for example, if we find that PowerPoint, the question earlier on, is a requirement, the organization could then develop a training plan that ensures that all of their consultants go through a presentation skills course as opposed to doing it on an ad hoc basis. But I have to reiterate, the profile is done on an individual basis because consultants have different levels of experience and qualification. The gap analysis of what training they need to meet the CPD points, 60 CPD points over the 3-year period, will be determined once the initial profile has been done. HR within organizations can then work with those consultants to determine how the training plan is rolled out.
Okay, thank you, Vashni. I have another question with regards to assessing risk in terms of theft and fraud in the travel industry. Is there any kind of relation from APP to that specific point?
I'm not sure really if it's risk around verification of qualifications, for example. So if the consultant is professing to have a particular qualification, we certainly have internal processes to verify that information prior to the award being given to that individual. So I think any manager organization that is, scared or uncomfortable about how consultants put forth their qualifications can rest assured we have internal processes to mitigate risks in that respect.
What does a consortium need to do to register as a group, and how would their individual consultants know to join that group?
Okay, so when you register at the outset, you could choose to register as a group or an individual. And it's pretty simple. The group registration, essentially, we just need to provide us with the names of the individuals that form part of that group. The registration is identical to what I've mentioned in the initial presentation. You provide us with personal information for those individuals that form part of the group. Invoicing, for example, is done on a group basis. So you don't necessarily have to receive 50 invoices if your group includes 50 people. But the login details and the building of the profile is done on an individual basis. So if there's 10 people within the group, each one of those 10 consultants will receive an individual login to basically build their profiles.
Okay. This is actually a very good question, and I often think it myself. How do you know what points are allocated for what from a CPD perspective? So how do I know that if I'm going to go to a workshop or an event of a specific supplier to get product knowledge, or if I go on a FAM trip, or if I learn another language, or if I take a PowerPoint presentation course, what number of points are allocated to each of those tasks or those activities?
So once the individual registers and pays for the registration and has access to their profile, that information is actually provided on their profile. So, there's drop downs of the regular courses. So for example, ASATA courses, a half-day course would give you 3 points. All of that information is already inputted into the profile. But naturally, ASATA will also be able to assist and engage with the individuals as they go along those processes.
Another question, and I'm not sure if I'm going to interpret it properly, but let's see. Is it possible to change the registration once you've employed someone as an ITC? So I'm assuming that this is going from maybe an individual registration to a group registration?
At this point, not really, because the person would have registered as an individual and already embarked on the process. So if someone joins the organization and they're up to 2 consultants as part of the ITC, the second person would have to join as an individual. If they, after 3 years or even before that, once the travel professional designation is open for registration, they would be able to then go for that registration as a group.
Great. Just once again, some housekeeping. If you'd like to ask a question, at the bottom of your screen, there's a Q&A box. Just click on that and you can ask your question. And also to the right, there's a chat box should you wish to use that. The webinar will be or is being recorded, and we will distribute a recording of that. And we also have some information on a toolkit which we can send you if you'd like to know a little bit more about APP. Navashni, I'm not sure would you like to run through the program live at all, or is that something that you'd like to look at a future webinar?
I think let's look at that for a future webinar. I think I would prefer that we allow for more questions today, because there seems to be a few areas that clarification is needed on, and it might just confuse if I go into the demonstration. We'll definitely set up a demonstration with another webinar.
Okay, great. So another question, how's the verification done for consultants who profess that they have done a FAM trip or gone to a workshop, for example?
Okay, so workshops is easier. You may have a certificate of attendance or attendance register. FAM trips is a little bit more difficult, but we assume in most cases there's an invitation linked to a FAM trip. So you provide us with the invitation and perhaps a thank you letter at the end of the FAM trip for joining it. We will have to look at those on a case-to-case basis and look at how that FAM trip essentially rolled out in terms of invite or thank you letters, etc. But those are the areas that we will engage individually with the consultant.
Okay. We're already half an hour into the webinar, so I'm going to wrap it up. If you have a question, I'll give you another 2 to 3 minutes to pose it. And you're also welcome to send us an email. Navashni, would you like to tell us what the email address is for APP?
Sure. I'm going to give you the email address in a minute. I just realized that there was a slide that may have made its way out of the presentation in terms of the minimum requirements. Do you mind if I just quickly alert our guests to the minimum requirements, because I see there's a question related to that. The minimum, I mentioned earlier on, there's two designations that could be applied for: the travel practitioner and the travel professional. At this point, the travel practitioner is fully open for registration and award of designation. The travel professional designation is open for registration, but not award of designation. We should be opening that for award of designation by the end of July. We're just waiting for final confirmation from SACWA. The minimum requirements for each of those: a travel practitioner, you need to have a NQF level. Oops, I heard someone scream through. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, can.
Okay. Travel practitioner, you need a minimum of 2 years of practical experience within the travel industry and a matric or an NQF level 4 equivalent qualification. For a travel professional, you need a minimum of 5 years of practical work experience within the travel industry, and pretty much the same in terms of qualification, which I repeat is a matric or level 4 equivalent. Now, why I had remembered to say that is I see that Walter Smith has asked a question in terms of, do we have an agreement with colleges to also register students who are completing their internship? No, we don't, because students who are doing their internship would need to complete their 2 years of practical work experience first prior to being able to register for the program.
Great.
I hope that clarifies.
It does. Thank you, Navashni. A really nice question from Mandy. Is this going to be a requirement, or is this a nice to have? Well, I would say it's not a nice to have, because you want to professionalize the industry and you want to be seen as a professional. But Navashni, your view on it?
At this point in time, it's not mandatory in any way. It's not being imposed by the industry. But as you've just said yourself, Nats, the idea is this is the start of a process that we're embarking on to professionalize the industry. We would like to think that at a later stage, it will be used as a stick, if I may, where, TMCs, for example, would need to have a particular percentage of their workforce that has a designation in order to, for example, apply for a tender. But the idea is that we want to move towards the professionalization of the industry, and therefore we encourage all consultants to take the opportunity now before it becomes mandatory. Second question: what must we do if we qualified like 20 years ago and there were not all this information for qualification? Mandy, that's the idea now, is to basically be able to provide and upskill yourself once you've registered for the designation. Maybe at this point I must mention, when you register for the designation, the only qualification that we recognize at that point and take forth the CPD points is for GDS, because we understand that many consultants have done GDS years ago. Any other qualification that has been done perhaps 2 years ago, 3 years ago, will not be, the points for that will not be counted towards CPD points at the point of designation. That then forces the consultant to go and embark on training courses over the 3-year period. So to repeat, and I hope I'm not complicating the explanation, at the point of registration and awarding of designation, the only points that are counted towards the 60 CPD points is GDS qualifications and any training that has been done in the current year. So in this case, 2018. Any courses, any familiarization trips that have been done prior to 2018 will not be counted towards the CPD.
Great. Thank you, Navashni. Okay, I'm going to close the webinar off now. As I've said, we do have some information that we can send to you by email if you'd like, and we are also recording the webinar, which we can send through to you. Nilesh, your question has come through. I don't know, Navashni, do you have 2 seconds to answer this? Will there be a cost implication on consultants for registration and getting the qualification? I think you have answered that in the presentation. So we will send you the presentation, Nilesh, so that you can see exactly what the costs are involved for registering and getting your designation. Navashni, the email address as a final end to the webinar, what email address can people use?
The email address is app@asata.co.za.
app@asata.co.za. As a final parting thought from Monique, thank you, Monique. Perhaps remind listeners that you don't need CPD points to get the designation. You just need to attain 60 points to retain the designation. So thank you everyone for joining us today on the webinar, app@asata.coza if you have any questions, and we will be releasing a recording of the webinar as well as information about APP to help you and to help your colleagues and perhaps your staff to get registered as either a travel professional or a travel practitioner in the near future. Thank you everyone. Have a great Friday and have a wonderful weekend. Thank you so much. Goodbye.